الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
وعليكم السلام.
Alhamdulillah, it seems like yesterday actually I was here. 2 months ago, I think. So it's quite regular we come back to the Eid. Alhamdulillah, it's a very blessed community. I always enjoy coming back and visiting the brothers here, mashallah. So this talk of inner dimensions of Salat and Zakat is something that the National Zakat Foundation have put together in order to kind of re-look at these two pillars. Yes, the pillar of Zakat and the pillar of Salah, and to spend some time collectively thinking about these pillars, thinking about our own relationship with the Salah, our own relationship with Zakat, and to explore these two pillars in a bit more detail. And these talks are taking place in different masajid, and inshallah over the next half an hour, 45 minutes, we'll share some thoughts, and these are just thoughts to share on these two pillars, and also to get your thoughts as well. This is the first time I'm speaking in front of your Imam, so I have to take ijazah, mashallah. I know he just started a few weeks ago. It's the first time we've met, alhamdulillah. And it's a blessing, to have, mashallah, a person of knowledge in your community who is here with you now daily. So I really encourage you all to take full use and advantage of your Imam and support him in every way possible. So looking at this topic, yes, the inner dimensions of Salah and Zakat, one thing we do is we go right back to the beginning, and we go right back and look at the pillars of Islam. The Prophet ﷺ, he said in the famous hadith that بُنِيَ الْإِسْلَامُ عَلَى خَمْسٍ, that Islam is built upon 5. And we all learn this when we're in madrasa, when we're little children, that there are 5 pillars to Islam. And that's often where it stops. Yeah? So we'll learn, yes, the first one is to testify that there's no deity worthy worship but Allah, that you pray Salah 5 times a day, you give Zakat, you fast in Ramadan, and you do the Hajj. And that tends to stop. Yeah, it tends to stop there, sorry. That's generally what we understand by the 5 pillars. And not much time is spent on actually delving into these 5 pillars. Why did the Prophet ﷺ say, بُنِيَ الْإِسْلَامَ عَلَى خَمْسٍ? Why did he say that Islam is built upon these 5? What is it about these 5 that make them the foundations of our faith? And how do they interlink? What is the Ibn Rajab rahimahullah? He said that especially when it comes to the first 3 pillars, and you see time and time again a focus is always made on the first 3. Yes, the Iman and the Salah and Zakat, even in the Quran. Time and time again we find this emphasis on these 3. And he says there's a synergy between them. Yes, there's a synergy between these 3, which leads to establishing and upholding subservience to Allah on earth. That when we establish these 3 pillars, then subservience, Islam, is actually established on earth. And that's what Islam is. When we say Islam, what are we referring to? We're referring to submission, subservience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Imam al-Iraqi rahimahullah, he states that whoever performs these 3 pillars correctly will be able to perform fasting and Hajj easily. And other ulama, they would often describe Salah and Zakat in particular as sister pillars. That they are right next to one another. That they belong together. You cannot separate them. So much emphasis is given, and we know when we look at the Quran itself, we find that the command or the Salah and the Zakat, they come together 28 times. So Zakat is mentioned 32 times in the Quran, and 28 times it comes right next to Salah. Yes, as if Allah is saying you cannot separate these two. Yes, the Salah is our individual connection that we build with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the Zakat is there to ensure that the community's needs are taken care of. And inshallah we'll look at each one of these in a bit more detail. So when we look at the Salah, and when we look at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's emphasis on the Salah in the Quran, we find that the history of Salah does not just begin with the Prophet ﷺ. The history of Salah goes all the way back. Yes? Same with Zakat. We find that this is not something that the Prophet ﷺ came with. Rather, we know that previous prophets, previous generations also had these commands. And when you look at the Salah in particular, we know that Ibrahim ﷺ is building the Kaaba. Yes, and he's building the Kaaba with his son Ismail. And he's in Mecca, they're building the Kaaba, and he makes a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From the adiyah that he makes, that are recorded in Surah Al-Baqarah, one of them is what? رَبِّ اجْعَلْنِي مُقِيمُ الصَّلَاةِ وَمِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِي. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make him from those who establish the prayer. Make him, and obviously his progeny, and those who come after him, from those who establish the prayer. And the ulama, they mentioned that it is as if Ibrahim alayhi salam at that moment in time, he could have asked for anything. But he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, oh Allah, make me from those who establish the prayer. To show us the importance of prayer. And similarly, we know later on in his life, when he leaves his wife Hajar and his son Ismail in the middle of the desert, yes, present day as we know, near the Mount Safa and Marwa, and he leaves, and she asks him that, are you going to leave us in a place where there's no people, and there's nobody here, we have no provisions? And he carries on walking, and she keeps asking him, and then she says, has Allah commanded you to do so? And Ibrahim a.s. responds, yes. So then what do we find? Ibrahim a.s. carries on, and she says that Allah will take care of us. And then when he reaches the distance, he turns around and he looks towards where the Kaaba is today, and he makes a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the first thing that he asks for is that, I've left them there so that they establish the prayer. And then he asks that their needs are taken care of, etc. That the people come close to them, that their needs are... subhanAllah, if that was us, the first thing we ask for is that their material and physical needs are taken care of. But here, Ibrahim a.s. is putting their spiritual needs first. That they are in need of the prayer. They are in need of remembering you, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And similarly, when we look at the story of Musa alayhi salam. Musa alayhi salam is lost in the desert. Yes, he sees a fire in the distance, and he says that to his family that I'll go and I'll get the directions and guidance, there will be people there. He goes there, and who does he find? He finds nobody. And that's where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks to Musa alayhi salam. In the very first conversation between Musa alayhi salam and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says to Musa alayhi salam, إِنَّنِي أَنَا اللَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنَا فَاعْبُدَنِي وَأَقِيمُ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِي. In the very first conversation between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Musa alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informs Musa that there is no deity worthy of worship but me, indeed I am Allah. And what does he say? فَأَقِيمُ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِي. Establish the prayer for my remembrance. Establish the prayer for my remembrance. Subhanallah, Musa alayhi salam. Then you look at Isa alayhi salam, again in the Quran. Isa alayhi salam, his mother, we all know it's a miraculous birth. She disappears, she comes back and she's carrying a baby. The people are shocked. What's happened here? She was known to be a devout worshipper of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And she can't speak. What happens next? We know that Isa alayhi salam, one of the three that speaks as a child, this is as a baby, in the arms of his mother, and he delivers what we know as his mini khutbah. Yes, and he says, إِنَّنِي قَالَ إِنِّي عَبْدُ اللَّهِ. Yes, that I am the slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. آتَانِيَ الْكِتَابَ وَجَعَلَنِي نَبِيًّا. That Allah has given me the book and He has made me a prophet. وَجَعَلَنِي مُبَارَكًا أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُ وَأَوْصَانِي بِالصَّلَاةِ وَالزَّكَاةِ مَا دُمْتُ حَيًّا. And He says that Allah has made me blessed wherever I may be. And He's what? Commanded me, enjoined upon me the prayer and zakat as long as I live. Now, Isa alayhi salam is saying this as a baby. Now this is what I've been commanded with. So we find that the prophets, the Anbiya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses them in the Quran. And we know the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, that the injunctions of the Quran, they came down through Jibreel. But there's one where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raised the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and brought the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam back to him. Yes, to give him this, alayhi salatu wasalam, to give him this command, the command of the salah. Again, to show us the importance. And we all know the story, and he comes down and he meets Musa. The story is well known. But this shows us what? It shows us the importance, my brothers and sisters. And that's what I want to highlight right now, is the importance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to the prayer. the importance that the Prophet ﷺ gave to the prayer. And then we should really question how much importance do we give to this same prayer. And obviously we're going to look at what is meant by the prayer. What is the prayer? If I was to ask each and every one of us now, the prayer that we just prayed, Salat al-Maghrib, how much of that was really a prayer? How much of that were we conscious of Allah? How much khushu' did we have in that salah? I'm sure for many of us, and myself first and foremost, that there wasn't much concentration, there wasn't much going on. So we need to really look at that. Because if this is something that Allah has commanded us with 5 times a day, and what is the purpose of the prayer? Is to connect with Allah. How connected are we in this prayer? So these are obviously points that we have to really take into account. The magnitude of the prayer. This is not just something that we do 5 times a day. No, there's a greater purpose to this. And the Prophet ﷺ really embedded this within the companions. When you look at the Prophet ﷺ towards the end of his life, we all know ﷺ would be in his abode, and he would look through the window or the gap, where he could see where the companions were praying. And right towards the end of his life, he's looking through and he's smiling, subhanallah. And the companions become happy. And why are they happy? They're thinking the Prophet ﷺ is going to be okay. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But the Prophet ﷺ is smiling. Why? Because he can see that the masjid is full at Fajr time. And he can see that now, subhanallah, I'm going to leave, but these companions are people now who established the prayer. And they have become consistent upon this prayer. Radiallahu anhu. And later on we know, even when you look at the companions themselves, when the Prophet ﷺ, he told them about the end of times. And he said that a day will be like a week, like a month, like a year. And what was the first question the companions had? They didn't say all the fitna that's going to occur. How do we protect ourselves? What do we do? All of this whole, we know the details of the end of times and the appearance of Dajjal and all of these things. But we find, subhanallah, that the first question they have is how do we pray out? How do we perform the prayer at such a time? This was their concern, this was their focus. The salah. And the Prophet ﷺ, before he passed away, he said, as-salatu was-salah. وَمَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ. That the prayer. So the prayer is something that we have to give real attention to. And the prayer itself, we have to understand is what is the connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That this prayer, it comes from what? The root word sila. Yes, to connect. And in the prayer, we're supposed to be connecting with Allah. Yes, that through this prayer that I'm going to perform now, the 4 rak'ah, etc., the 2 rak'ah, that I am connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now there are many issues that we have when it comes to our own prayers. We find difficulty doing that. Yes, it's not easy to gain that khushu', to gain that state of mind. So there are certain things we have to do to try to improve that connection. What are some of those things? What do we think? How do we improve our khushu', our state in the salah, our connection in the salah? What kind of tips do we have?
Understand what you're reading.
Understand what you're reading. SubhanAllah. This is the first thing, isn't it? We should try to understand what we're reading in the salah. Yes, the Surah Al-Fatiha. What we're saying when we're in ruku'. What we're saying when we're in sujood. Yes, what we're saying in the tashahhud. Find a book that goes through the basic meanings of what we're saying in the prayer. Learn the meaning of the prayer. This is the first thing. We have to learn the meaning, so we understand at least what we're saying. Yes, there's no other situation you would go into in your life where you enter into a conversation and you do not know what you're saying. Yes, it would never happen. You would never enter into a conversation, you don't know what you're saying to the person. And you start speaking a different language and you don't know what you're saying. You wouldn't do that. Yes, but when it comes to the prayer, we seem to think that's acceptable. That it's okay, and there's no issue with it. That's a major issue. Yes, is that we don't even understand what we're saying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, so the first thing, a good point is to understand. What else?
Realize who you're making a connection with.
Alhamdulillah, realize who you're making a connection with. Yes, so to learn more about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, who is it that we're connecting with in this prayer? What do we know about Allah? Yes? Maybe learn His names and attributes. Who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Yes, the more you learn about Allah, and the more inshallah our hearts will be open when we're praying to Allah. But if we don't know about Allah, then how are we going to get any type of feeling in our prayer? Very good. Anything else?
pray somewhere where there's no distractions, so you're fully focused.
Okay, so to try and pray somewhere where you are not distracted, so you can focus. Yes, so your environment does have a role to play, where you're praying. You can't be praying and subhanAllah, the TV's on. So you want to just listen to the commentary of the match so you don't miss anything, yeah? No, you don't know what's going on. You need to make sure you're in
I
there.
can't pray when the computer's on, when you're working on the computer.
Yes, don't pray when you're working on the computer. Yes, try and turn everything off. Yes, at that time. What else?
Try and pray in Jamaat.
Pray in Jama'ah. Yes, come to the masjid. Masjid is the house.
And pray for Jamaat
Yes,
in the masjid.
in the masjid. Alhamdulillah. And this is a blessing to come to the masjid, the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to perform the prayer. There's so much encouragement on this. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he said that the salah in Jama'ah afdalu, it's more virtuous than the salah which a person prays by oneself. And he mentioned in the hadith, ب27 درجة, at 27 degrees, higher than the salah that you perform by yourself, because you're coming and you're connecting with the jama'ah, you're coming to the masjid, the extra effort that you make. Yes, and of course there's so many benefits when you come and you meet with the jama'ah, so we should try. And of course especially the Fajr and Isha prayers. When the Prophet ﷺ, he said that the one who prays the Isha prayer, yes, in jama'ah, it is as if he stood there half the night in prayer. Subhanallah, none of us here, I'll be honest with you, can stand half the night in prayer. And if you can do 5 minutes, alhamdulillah, but half the night is very difficult. The Prophet ﷺ is saying, come and pray your Isha in Jama'ah, you get half the night written down that you've prayed. And you pray your Fajr in Jama'ah as well, and your Isha and your Fajr, it is as if you prayed the whole night in prayer. And this is from the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So to try and pray in Jama'ah. What else? There's one key one that I'm waiting for.
And especially if you go to a Hajj, to the Umrah, pray there 5 times a day as well. If you're going for a Hajj or Umrah, pray there 5 times a day as well.
Yes,
That is very important.
definitely. No, Jazakallah khair.
What about humility in your posture, having that awe in who you're connecting with, and
Yeah, so good. Okay, so
something that Imam Ghazali mentions in his Inner Dimensions.
yes, to when you're in your ruku' and your sujood and each one of these positions, yes, and we make supplications when we're in those positions, understanding what they are, understanding who it is we are prostrating to. And when you're going down in sujood, أَقْرَبُ مَا يَكُونُ الْعَبْدُ مِنْ رَبِّهِ وَهُوَ سَاجِدٌ فَأَكْثِرُ الدُّعَاء. And the Prophet ﷺ said the closest the slave is to his Lord, to Allah, is when he's in sujood. So that position when you're in sujood is ultimate humility to Allah, that you're prostrating to Him. So realizing this, and when you are in that position, making dua to Allah, doing these supplications. Any others?
Especially when it's Ramadan, pray 5 times a day as well.
Yes.
And keep your fasting very well.
Yes. No, Jazakallah khair.
Yeah,
So in Ramadan, to ensure we're praying our 5 salawat.
yeah.
I think one key one that was given, an advice given to me by my teacher, he said that when you're struggling with your salah, he said one of the reasons is that you tend to rush your salah. So he says, do what? Slow down. Take it easy. When you do your takbir, you say Allahu Akbar, and the whole point of saying Allahu Akbar is that Allah is the greatest. Now everything else, يعني كل شيء سواه أصغر, that everything other than Him is minute, is small. So when we say Allahu Akbar, we're entering into this salah. Now take it easy, take your time. And if you feel yourself rushing, slow down, straight away. Yani slow yourself down. Just the action of slowing yourself down will make you realize that actually I need to concentrate now, I need to focus now. So to try to slow down in the prayer. This is very important. And understanding, subhanAllah, that the prayer itself is what? The prayer itself is a conversation between the slave and Allah. So we should understand that actually when we enter into the prayer and we say Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds. He says, Hamidani Abdi, that my slave has praised me. And like this, the whole Surah Al-Fatiha, we go on, we recite ayah after ayah, and after each ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is responding. I mean, Lord of the worlds. And it's Allah, He's responding to us in salah. It's like a conversation with Allah. This is the pinnacle of what a believer could ask for. This is why you find the Prophet ﷺ, any issue, he would say, what to Bilal, make the call to prayer, so what we can find peace in prayer, that we can pray to Allah, we can call upon Allah. That was a sweetness for him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he tasted, because he understood and realized what the prayer was. It wasn't just some actions that we go through, an obligation that we have to fulfill. No, there's something meaningful behind it. But then, of course, there's much that can be said, about the prayer. But I think it's very important that, of course, we understand the importance of the prayer, and I believe that everybody here is here because they understand the importance of the prayer. Allah has brought you to the masjid, alhamdulillah, and that's one area that I think, alhamdulillah, it's a blessing from Allah that we understand we should pray 5 times a day. But I think we can all work on the quality of our prayer. Yes, even if we are praying 5 times a day, we need to take some time out, yes, to judge the quality of our prayer. After the prayer we do the salam, we say astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. We seek Allah's forgiveness because we know there were deficiencies in that prayer. So we should take time to take count of that prayer. What was that prayer like? What do I need to improve on next time? Spend some time focusing on this. Okay, so moving on to the next topic that I wanted to touch on, and that was something that Imran and Asif attended last week actually. So they should, mashallah, I think I'll let Imran take care of this.
It's going up the pizzas now, I think.
So we had a session on Zakat. So Zakat, of course, this is, like I said, these courses have been organized, sessions have been organized by the National Zakat Foundation. And by virtue of the name, we all know that it is an organization that focuses on Zakat. So collecting and distributing Zakat in the United Kingdom. And over the last, year or so, a lot of attention has been given to trying to understand the true purpose of Zakat and where we're going wrong in terms of our collection and distribution of Zakat. Often when you look in the Muslim community, we seem to perceive Zakat as simply a charity payment that we have to do once a year. But Zakat is much more than that. When you look at Zakat, subhanAllah, as we mentioned, Allah mentions it time and time again in the Quran. And, Shaykh Waliullah Dahlawi, he said something beautiful about the Zakat. He said that, the Zakat has a direct benefit for the payer and the society. We often think Zakat, we've paid our Zakat, job done. Yes, that's it. Khalas, I've paid my Zakat, I've done what I had to do. And from a payer's perspective, this is the understanding that, I've discharged my responsibility. However, of course, what happens to that Zakat? And we have to look at the outcome of the Zakat to see if actually the Zakat is achieving what it's supposed to achieve. And Shaykh Waliullah, he says that the benefits of Zakat go back to the payer and society. He says, of course, for the payer, he's discharged his responsibility. It will be a purification for him when it comes to his wealth, etc., and mentions some of the benefits. But he says when it comes to the society, he says that the cornerstone of subservience to Allah is being strengthened by this Zakat. So when you think of Zakat, we should be thinking that actually the Zakat is there to ensure that the needs of the Muslim community are taken care of. Yes? We often think that Zakat is purely about poverty. That's what Zakat is about. Any poverty alleviation, poverty relief. If it was about poverty relief, we would have found that Allah would have said, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ. Yes, that the Zakat is for the fuqara. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions how many categories?
8.
How many times we've done this work in university? Yes, 8 categories mentioned in the Quran that they are entitled to Zakat. That they are entitled to Zakat. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, He has set these categories, and each category is entitled to receive Zakat. Now when you look at the purpose of Zakat, yes, Imam al-Tabari rahimahullah, he mentioned something in the tafsir to this ayah. He says when it comes to the purpose of Zakat, he says its purpose goes back to 2 points. He says سَدُّ خَلَّةِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ and he says مَعُونَةُ الْإِسْلَامِ وَتَقْوِيَةُ. He says that actually when it comes to Zakat, there's 2 functions, 2 purposes for Zakat. Number 1 is to fulfill the needs of the Muslims. Yes, fulfill the needs of the Muslims. And generally we have poor Muslims, they need taking care of, you take care of their needs. Yes, and then he says secondly, it's to aid Islam or assist Islam and strengthen Islam. How do you aid and strengthen Islam if you're constantly just giving to the poor person? That's why we have these 8 categories. And that's why we have to think, how does Islam, how does the institution of zakat ensure that actually Islam is strengthened? Now, even when you look at giving zakat to relieve poverty, what we have to understand is that, even when it comes to, purely giving somebody money for food, for example, this is what we tend to do. Yes, we will think that there's poor people there, give them money, that will take care of their needs. Yes? But even when it comes to how do you get them out, Umar radiallahu anhu, subhanallah, he said that you should give enough to a person that they become rich, that they become self-sufficient, that they can now start to do something. So when you think about, actually we give zakat to a person to get him out of poverty, so that this person becomes self-sufficient, so that they're not always relying on you. And this is why one of the aspects of the National Zakat Foundation when it comes to zakat is that it's not purely about poverty relief, but it's about economic empowerment. That actually we want to get this person out of poverty in order that they can now live a life where they're self-sufficient and they can eventually become zakat payers themselves. Yeah, so zakat, so it's much more than just giving food, yes? Often we think it's just, this person doesn't have any food, give them food, oh mashallah, zakat's done. No. And then you have all the other categories as well. And you have so many other, the other 7 categories or 6 categories if you take into account masakin, and you have 6 other categories. What is the purpose behind zakat in these 6 categories? Yes, if we look at the problems within the Muslim community, then what are the problems? Then what do we think the problems are in the Muslim community? What problems do we have? We don't have to say snow or anything like that. Snow is okay. Poverty.
Poverty is one.
Poverty is one. Okay.
Injustice as well, loss of injustice.
Okay, dhulm is another. What in the Muslim community in the UK, what problems are we facing?
Identity.
Unity. Well, the T,
Family breakdown.
Family breakdown.
Education.
Loss of faith.
Loss of faith.
He has been to session.
Atheism.
Yeah.
Yes.
200.
Now youth losing their faith.
What was that figure that you quoted? 200,000.
200,000. Right.
200,000 have lost their faith.
200,000. 7%.
7%.
200,000. This is a report that's coming out soon. It was conducted, I believe, by the Muslim Council of Britain. That there are 200,000 now, ex-Muslims, so to speak. That's that they've left their faith altogether. That's a shocking, astounding figure. When I was at Manchester Metropolitan University for a few weeks, I was doing some sessions there, and the students were telling me openly that we have Muslims who are on campus, they won't even come to Jum'ah. They, Islam, belief, all of these things. There's nothing. Like deen, I remember in our time, the least you would do is go to Jum'ah. If you, whatever else you did, that I have to pray Jum'ah. The guy might be out clubbing the night before, drinking this and that. The Jum'ah I have to pray. And he knows, yes, I'm a Muslim, proud, at least I'm a Muslim. Now, subhanAllah, it's completely different. We have now youth who say openly, don't believe Islam, these things. So we've got a major crisis. And to be honest with you, when it comes to our youth and ensuring that Islam is something which is relevant to them. That's some problems. We've got Islamophobia on the rise. Yes, I was at a presentation 2 weeks ago by the police, and they said that since May last year, there's been a 500% increase in Islamophobic attacks in Greater Manchester. Since last year, obviously the Manchester bombing, but 500% increase. Yes, when you look at, loads of statistics here, and I shared some of these last week, in terms of the perception of non-Muslims towards Muslims. There was a survey conducted by the MCB. They said that 37% of those surveyed admitted that they would be more likely to support policies that reduce the number of Muslims in Britain. 62% agreed that Britain will lose its identity if more Muslims come to live here. 80% commented that 55% said that they would be bothered by the prospect of a mosque being built in their community. 33% agreed with the suggestion of the UKIP leader that ghettos are sprung up in Britain where Sharia law is prevalent and the police and other authorities are withdrawn. And this is the wider community. This is their perception. We often think everything's all good, mashallah, we're in Rochdale, everywhere we look there's the Pakis around us, alhamdulillah, everything's all good. Anyway, we're just, mashallah, taking care of our lives and kids are going to school and whatnot. But when you look at, subhanallah, what is going on around the country, you find that there's a lot of negative perceptions of Islam and Muslims. And these have to be combated. Yeah? So these are, again, other problems that we have. And as we mentioned, the figure of 200,000. The point being what? The point being that as a community, we have a lot of issues. Now, when we look at zakat, zakat cannot solve each and every one of those issues. But what zakat can do, yes, is combat some of these issues. And what we believe is actually, through some of the categories of zakat, yes, so namely category 4, ta'lif, mu'allafat al-qulub, and category 7, fi sabilillah, that zakat can be used in order to counteract some of these problems that we have in the community. So for example, we know there's a major problem in education. Yes, you just have to look at our madaris and you know that they are substandard. If you look at the problems we have with youth now, they've not just come about now. They've come about because we failed as imams, we failed as madaris, we failed as masajid to really engage and present Islam as something relevant to the youth. Yes, children growing up, they've gone through maybe 6 years, 10 years of madrasa, but they think Islam is completely alien. It's like, how does it impact my life? They've just learned how to read the Quran. They don't understand anything in the Quran. They've learned the 5 pillars, mashallah, they've memorized this. We say, subhanallah, look at this boy, mashallah, he can tell you the 6 articles of faith. Mashallah, he can tell you the 5 pillars. Mashallah, he's memorized these surahs. But that same boy, subhanallah, at night, what is he doing? He's not learned the principles of the Quran, the teachings of the Quran, how to live the Quran. These things have never been taught to him. And unfortunately, in our madaris, that's always been the process. They've never been engaged. And even now, when you look, subhanallah, I was talking to some of our teachers at the madrasa, that these children, they go to school. Yes, in school, subhanallah, they have PowerPoints, they have group discussion, they have activities, there's arts and crafts, there's all of these things to engage the child. And they come to madrasa and what? Sit down, 1 hour, don't speak, read the Quran. You don't ask questions. Islamic studies, don't ask questions. You're not allowed to ask questions. This is just how it is. Yeah, so we think that these children are going to grow up to, mashallah, love Islam. To understand Islam. So we have a major problem in terms of education. There is one, and I always recommend when I go to speak at places, there's one madrasa that I do recommend every madrasa go and visit and go and learn from. And that's Abu Hanifa Foundation in Blackburn. Sheikh Imtiaz Damia set this up a number of years ago with some brothers in Blackburn, and I visited him many times, alhamdulillah. He's also come and helped us at Chido. But subhanallah, when you look at a madrasa, what a madrasa should be, yes, in terms of education, in terms of vision, in terms of really engaging the next generation, then you think that's a place to go. And I really recommend, even from here, for any yourselves to go and visit. Sheikh Imtiaz, very open. They will come, they will share their ethos with you, their vision, how they do things. Subhanallah, it's something else, honestly. But that's the type of model that we need, taking out to other masajid, other madaris across the country. Now, what we're trying to say is that actually, when you look at fi sabilillah, we also know there's a problem in scholarship. Yes, scholars. How many scholars do we have that are facing or head-on the challenges or the issues that we have in today's day and age? The rise of atheism. How many scholars are facing that? How many secularism? How do we understand that? Who's responded to that? Again, there's a problem in scholarship. So we need scholars to face these challenges. We need institutions. And what we're saying is that under category 7, fi sabilillah, that you can use zakat funds. And again, there's a whole research done on this, there's discussion, there's differences of opinion, don't get me wrong. But we believe that actually, under category 7, under fi sabilillah, we can support projects which will face some of these challenges that we have. So to ensure that actually there's quality scholarship. So there are people in our communities who have certain skills. Let's fund them in order for them to be able to go and do their PhDs or masters or whatever it might be, in order to start their projects that they want to start. That will bring benefit, yes, that will bring some real tangible benefit. Similarly, under category 4, and we know, we just talked about some of the statistics, when it comes to the non-Muslim perception of Islam. It's very negative, yes. So how do we combat that? We know at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there was this issue, there's this thing called ta'leef, which is reconciling the hearts. This is one of the categories mentioned in the Quran. Yes, and there's a whole long discussion about did that occur, what did the Prophet ﷺ use his own money, was it zakat funds when he gave to Umayyah bin Khalaf, and there's a whole discussion, and many research papers have been written. But what everybody agrees is that this is a category of zakat, that of eligible recipients. So now today, how do we understand? And that's the key point, is how do we understand these categories today? And if we understand them in a way, how will it really help us benefit our communities here in the UK? So as we said, there is zakat for poverty relief. But now we're saying that there should be a budget in order to face some of the problems that we just mentioned. So for example, how do we improve the image of Islam? Yeah, one of the things that you can do, and this was a campaign that was run, and I know Neely took part in, which was Visit My Mosque. Visit My Mosque is a campaign which is run by the Muslim Council of Britain. I think it started a few years ago, and this year over 200 mosques opened their doors, and non-Muslims came and they learnt about Islam and they had interaction with Muslims, and there was a positive press on the back of it. So there's a lot of benefits that come from it. That, what we're saying is actually that would fall under category 4, ta'leef, mu'allafat al-qulub, so to reconcile the hearts of people. So these are projects which, and obviously MCB is an organization that needs funding. There's forces as an organization, and as such, if you look at these two organizations, regardless of what our thoughts are about these organizations, but if you look at two key organizations in the Muslim community in the UK, you've got one which is MCB, regardless of whether we accept it or not, they're seen as an umbrella body, and the second one is FOSIS, yes, the Federation of what's it called?
Society. Federation of Students Islamic Societies.
Student Islamic Societies, yeah. That they, subhanAllah, how many thousands upon thousands of Muslim students that they have responsibility for. And again, it's an organization that requires funding. And obviously vision, strategy, all of these things need to be in place. But the point being what? The point being is that when it comes to zakat and looking at the true purpose of zakat and trying to understand how does this fit in with us here in 21st century, being in the 21st century in the United Kingdom, and we believe that actually zakat has a role to play in order for us to grow as a community, in order to support and fund some of the projects that the Muslim community want to take forward. So they're just some points. Obviously, I don't want to go into the whole kind of thing that we went last time about central collection, local distribution, all of these things. I mean, one thing I will say is about this, practice that we have as a Muslim community of sending zakat abroad. That's the general practice. Is what in the Muslim community is that any zakat we have, we send it back home. Yes, so we send it to Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, wherever it might be, or we send it to other Muslim countries. Now we have to understand actually the asl, yes, is always that zakat is distributed in your locality. Yes, zakat is distributed in your locality. When the Prophet ﷺ, he sent Mu'adh ibn Jabal to Yemen, he told Mu'adh that invite them to La ilaha illallah, and if they accept, command them with the salah, and if they accept, he said, collect from their rich and distribute to their poor when it comes to the zakat. And this is what Mu'adh did. And many years later, when Umar was a Khalifa, he collected it, and he actually sent zakat back to Medina. Umar became angry, why is he sending zakat here? He went back to Mu'adh. Mu'adh said, I've already distributed it. And then Umar radiallahu anhu accepted it. The point being what? The point being is that it was always done locally. And again, there are many athar that I have here from Kitab al-Amwal, where companions and the tabi'een would say that zakat was always distributed in the locality from which it was collected. So they are ahaq. Your locality is more deserving of your zakat. Now, of course, many of the books of fiqh, they talk about if somebody is ahwaj, yes, it can be taken abroad if there's more need. Yes, so nobody's saying that you can't give abroad, but the point being is that actually we need to invest in our local communities. Yes, when it comes to the poor and needy, and even as an organization, the National Zakat Foundation gives 75% of what comes in goes to the poor and needy, and for economic empowerment. Maybe, and again, like I said, it's not just feeding a poor person, but actually taking them on a course to develop some skills so they can get into employment. Yeah, so that's under the poor and needy. And 15% is now going to be given towards these two categories of 4 and 7. And I believe, that as a community, we should support this initiative. And like I said, everybody has their own individual choice. They might want to give a bit here, a bit abroad, a bit to family. Of course, if you have poor family members, they're more in need, etc. And I remember, and I think I mentioned this last week, where one of our teachers, he was asked that, can I give zakat to my sister? Somebody rang in and asked him this question. And we often have this, we have brothers and sisters around the world, brothers and sisters in faith who are suffering. And this guy's asking about his sister. And the Shaykh, he responds, he says, Hada Ain, that this is an embarrassing question. That you're asking me, can I give zakat to, my sister? He says, let's say you have £1,000. Yes, the zakat on your £1,000 is how much? £25. Now how much are you left with? £975. He said, you're asking me, can I give £25 to my sister, and you want to keep £975? And you should be giving £200, £300 to your sister. And similarly, when we see, and often people bring this argument that there are Muslims suffering around the world, yeah, the Muslims suffering around the world, give more. Yes, give £200, £300 sadaqah. But when it comes to your zakat, use it for a particular purpose. And I believe that actually, if we keep it local, it's supporting institutions in the UK, and obviously the poor in the UK. And of course, we support our brothers and sisters around the world through sadaqah, through giving, more than what our zakat might be. Like I said, zakat might be £25. That doesn't mean you only give £25. Give £100. You have a lot left. Anyway, I think we'll end it there. I know there's food ready, I said.
Not yet.
Not yet, subhanAllah. Not yet. I think my food's ready, but that's the problem.
But in Ramadan every year, brother, what I do, me and my mum, we give zakat every year during the month of Ramadan, because if you give zakat in Ramadan, Allah Mia says you will get the sabab for it.
Okay, no, this is good, mashallah. And giving your zakat in Ramadan. Generally, as we've talked about before, you should have a zakat anniversary date, a fixed date that you give it on every year. And most people,
mashallah, I do give zakat every year in Ramadan when it comes, mashallah, that I can get the sabab for it.
Inshallah, no, just Allah to reward you. Okay, any questions?
How do we identify, how does National Zakat Foundation identify the people that need zakat?
So when it comes to the kind of straightforward poverty kind of relief cases, so people would fill out an application. So they would fill out an application, and that application would then go to a caseworker. So these caseworkers are all specialists, so they've got knowledge in terms of council funding, in terms of what you can get from in terms of benefits and whatnot. But they look at that individual case, and then they will examine obviously bank statements, all of these different types of things, and then they will look at where can savings be made. What's the issue? Why is it that you're not, for example, you can't pay your rent, or you don't have enough food, or whatever.
So basically, the work's like a welfare rights sort of.
Yes. So then they will put them in contact. But often there's cases, and many cases, especially with asylum seekers and whatnot, where there is no support from the state. Often there's cases where people have been thrown out. There's 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks before they'll get anything in terms of benefits. That takes time. So like somebody calls up now and they say, look, I need somewhere to stay tonight, or I've seen this person homeless, I need somewhere to stay. So they have an emergency fund where actually for that one night they will contact a hotel in that locality that they have, obviously in each city, and they will pay for that one night, and then they'll see how what's their situation the next day, what can we do. So it's all kind of judged on individual cases, but they have a proper process in place, which is obviously very important. And this is why, even when you talk about locally, a lot of people say, I'll do it myself. Do it yourself doesn't work. When you say, I'll do it myself, you're just going to give a person a bit of money. You don't know what's happened after that. Yes, they might be alright for one night, but what happens after that? 2 nights, a bit of food. But again, the whole kind of thinking is that we want to take them out of poverty. Yes, it's not just about providing a meal for them. And it's about actually how do we now get them out of the state that they're in. And they might need other things. They might need counseling. Yes, they might have mental health issues. They might have being domestically abused, whatever it might be. There are so many different issues that you need to take into account. And this is why as an organization, with obviously the expertise that they have, especially in this field of caseworking, they look at all of these different things. And then they, again, through the links they have with all these different types of organizations, they then try to meet the needs of that individual applicant. So I believe it's a very comprehensive system actually, which again tries to identify the core issues and then how to get out of those core issues. Anything else?
So I take it National Zakat Foundation is like other charities. Obviously, if they've got employees, there'll be a budget for staff and administration, etc.
Yes, so it's so they have in terms of their I think they have about 40 staff now.
40.
40, yeah, I'm sure that's growing. Or just under. So, and they would take 10% as admin fee. But that 10% is only used for caseworkers. So, even from the zakat, one of the categories of zakat is recipients is amilina alayha. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that amilina alayha, those who are in charge of this distribution of zakat, collection and distribution of zakat, can take up to, are entitled to receive from that zakat. So it's one category that's actually mentioned in the Quran. And obviously traditionally that was done by the state. So the Islamic government would have a group of people that would go and do that. Now obviously we don't have a state, so what do? So you have to pay people to do that work. But they have a policy at the National Zakat Foundation where they take 10%. And from that 10%, it's only spent on caseworkers. So it won't be spent on, for example, a marketing budget. Yeah, it won't be spent on these other things. That comes through, gift aid and private donations. But when it comes to purely the actual caseworkers, they will be paid from that 10%.
Can we give zakat to poor people, brother, or not?
Yes, inshallah.
If somebody's very poor, we can give zakat to them.
Yeah. So as we mentioned, when it comes to obviously we need to ensure that there's zakat eligible. And this is why we said it's better to give to an organisation, because then they can see, is this person actually eligible to receive zakat, are they allowed to receive it, do they come under the criteria, and then they can best to make a judgment. So it's hard for a person to do it by themselves.
So, I mean, just as somebody approaches you, and like I said, they're in a position where they're not getting the benefits for the next 6 weeks, 7 weeks. I mean, I deal with a lot of people in those circumstances in my job. So they have no money, but people know that in the family that this is what's happening. So they should. I mean, but then again, we don't know what their overall financial situation is. We don't know whether they've got money, in gold and so forth.
Yeah, no, it's true. And again, from what I understand, is they check all of these things. So what assets do you have, in addition to obviously cash in the bank? But what else do you have? Sometimes, obviously, if a person's not honest, it's difficult to handle. They can judge on the apparent. But again, I don't know exactly how they handle each situation, what they would do in that situation. But I believe they do have a process in place. But again, in terms of exactly how they deal with them, I'm not too sure. Khair? سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. جزاكم الله خير.